Well, hello, friends. This is David Voth. I hope you're all having a wonderful day. Well, I'm having a pretty good day here in Texas. It's been really nice and sunny. Well, we've done two videos in the series, and this is the third on the existence, the true nature of existence, and what is God, and who are we. So, um, yeah, this is going to be interesting. So I want to go ahead and get into the actual meat of the argument and the information that we're going to cover. This is going to be very deep information, so it's going to be difficult. I have no idea how I'm going to be able to explain all of this. I want to see if I can sit here and tell you guys, give you some comprehension in some of the deepest mysteries that have ever been known to man. In fact, this information is so deep that almost nobody's ever even gotten close to understanding this kind of information, because there's a lot of stuff that you just kind of assume and you don't think about it very much, and so you're going to be surprised. All right, let me give an example. For instance, there's a doctrine or a teaching that the universe is infinite. Now, somebody might say, well, how do we know it's infinite? Maybe it does end somewhere. Well, here's why we know that it's infinite, but also this is going to explain why we use philosophy to explain it. Because sometimes philosophy is the only way we can understand the greater wisdom. But let's say you got in a little ship and you took off from Earth and you went out into space. And you kept going and going and going and going. And you went 1,000,000 miles and you saw some stars go by and you went another million and another million. And then you went 1,000,000,000 and you went 1,000,000,000,000. As you know, every time you add a 0 to a 1, the number gets larger. And you can continue to add zeros on into infinity. Now that isn't philosophy, that's math. But let me add philosophy. Let's say you went on in your spaceship and you got out there so far. Let's say that you took with you in your spaceship some bricks and a trowel and some cement. And you got way out there, zillions of miles, and you stopped your ship and you got out and you started building a wall. And you build this wall, it was very high and wide. And, just as far as you could see, there was a wall. And you said, okay, that's it. That's where it all ends. There's nothing beyond this wall. But there's one more thing that you brought with you on this trip. You brought a big hammer. So you take the hammer and you bust a hole through the wall. And you look through and you notice that there is space on both sides of the wall. So everything doesn't end there. See, there's no way to imagine an end to the universe. You can't imagine the end because there's always space on the other side of the wall. Wherever you make a wall, there's going to be more space beyond that. However, space, theoretically, is emptiness, supposedly nothing. But you see, even that which is empty is a thing. It's a concept. So now we realize then that which is something and that which is nothing are both concepts. And so, just as there is something on the side of the wall where it's supposed to end, there is actually nothing on the other side of the wall where there's supposed to be something. Because even something is really nothing because it's only a concept. Just as nothing is a concept. You put the zeros behind the 1 and that's just a concept. It's math. It's something you do in your mind. You can't actually go out and do the experiment in reality. You can only write it on paper. And on paper, it's conceivable. And so that is what we believe. We believe the universe is infinite because on paper it is infinite. And in our mind it is infinite. Now let's imagine that the universe is one whole. Usually we conceive of a whole by drawing a circle. Now, inside of the circle, we're going to say is everything, inside and outside of the circle. Okay, so the circle is going to represent everything. Now, let's examine everything. Everything includes something and nothing, and left and right and up and down. We're going to examine everything here for a moment. In order to examine everything, we're going to take an area somewhere in the middle of space. Somewhere out there in space we're going to go. And this is everything. And as far as you can see, in one direction or another, there's just everything. And in this area, we're going to draw a big circle. The reason we're going to do that is because we need to be able to conceive. We need a language so we can talk about everything. The reason we draw this big circle is because inside the circle, we're going to call that within. It actually isn't within. Because if we drew another circle inside the original circle, then we make a little mark outside of the smaller circle, then that mark that we drew was actually an outside, because it's outside of the smaller circle. But it's still an inside because it's inside the larger circle. And we could make a mark outside of the larger circle, and that could be the outside. Now, if we go from the circle inward, we can go infinite, because when we get to the very center of the circle, we then can go into fractions. We can have a 1 in the middle of the circle. Let's say it's 10 inches, the circle. So we can have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 circles. Well, the center is just a pinpoint. But if it is an actual point, it must have depth and breadth. And therefore, we can go inside that point as well. If that point is something, then it is a thing. And a thing has depth and breadth and width. And everything that exists that we call a thing is a whole. It's a whole thing. And every whole can be divided into fractions. We can cut the whole into a half. We can cut the half into a quarter. We can cut the 1/4 or the quarter into a 1/8 or a 1/16 or a 1/32 or a 1/64 or a 128, whatever. We can go on and on and on and on to an infinity. That is why when you look at a wall, it looks solid. But if you get to looking inside with a microscope, you notice that it goes deep within with little particles that are smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And as far as we can tell, there are little particles within little particles on into infinity. See, we go down to the molecule, we go down to the atom, and then the neutron, the proton, and the nucleus of the atom, and then we go into photons, and on and on and on and on. And this has to go on into infinity because we cannot conceive of a wall or a place where it no longer continues. The same thing is true of outside of the circle. If we go to the outside circle and we go outward, we can go in a direction away from the center of the circle forever and ever to infinity. Again, as we said, simply by taking and adding a 0 and more zeros and more zeros and more zeros. I mean, we can go 10 miles, 100 miles, 1,000 miles, 1,000,000 miles, 1,000,000,000,000 miles, and on and on and on. So this is why we know, or we believe, that the universe is infinite. However, all of this exists. Why does everything exist? This is what we want to know. Why do you exist? And why does God exist? And how do we know that He does? And how do we know that we do? Well, let's go back to the circle. I can prove to you that that circle, which is a whole, has everything, and everything exists within the whole. This is really what quantum physics is about. Quantum physics today, they use the word quantum. I like to use the word variable because there are many variables to everything. One thing is a whole. Now, if you take a line and you cut the whole in half, you then have a left side and a right side. The very fact that you've created a left side, see, without intending to make a right side, but you always create a right side as soon as you've made a left side. You cannot cut something in half and make a left part without intentionally or unintentionally making a right side. This is also the same for up and down. It's also the same for an in and an out. Because if you make a circle and say everything inside of that exists, but nothing on the outside exists, well, the fact that you drew a circle and you say that there is something on the inside proves beyond a doubt that there is something on the outside. Now see, in reality, nothing exists. It's just a concept because all I did was draw a circle. By drawing one circle, how did I immediately, just by drawing the circle, create an inside and an outside? You say, well, okay, you've created an inside and an outside. But that doesn't mean that everything exists. Yes, it does. It proves that everything exists. See, whether you had a God who created it, or whether it just always existed, or for whatever reason, I can prove to you that everything in the universe exists, whether we want to exist or not. Whether I died and you died and everyone died in the universe, it still exists. Whether we want it to exist or whether we believe it exists or whatever, I can prove to you by drawing a circle that everything exists. And here's how we do it. Number one, by drawing a line down the center, we find that there is a left and a right. We also create two halves. By drawing another line, we create fourths, and we create an up and a down. We also, by drawing the circle, create an inside and an outside, as we said before. But this gets deeper. If you're seeing that what you've done is create a concept of something, okay, look at the thing that you've made. Look at the circle, that thing, and tell me, is it large or is it small? See, now it's not just left and right, up and down, in and out, but we've also got large and small. If I say it's small, then I have already insinuated the idea of large. Now I'm asking you to touch it and tell me what it feels like. If it is there, okay, you're looking at the circle that you just drew, then it must be there. Now, I want you to touch it and tell me what it feels like. If you say, well, it feels hard, then you automatically made the concept of soft, bumpy, multitudes and endless numbers of ways you could touch it and it could feel. Now I want you to look at it and tell me what color it is. You just drew a line. Now I want you to look at the line and tell me what color is the chalk line. What color is the pencil line? You drew the circle. Tell me what color it is. You say, well, it's a black line. Okay, you've just created white because you just said it was black. See? Now, you might also imagine endless numbers of other colors that it could be. You could go on and on and on with this illustration. You could taste it. You could tell me what it tasted like. Now, what we've done is we have just proven that all of the universe exists only as a concept. If I say that exists, I have to explain what it is and how it exists and why it exists as a concept. There isn't any way that I can look at anything. Like if I go outside and I look at a tree and you tell me to touch it, and I do, and I feel it, and I say, well, it's rough and it's brown and it's got green leaves. Okay, does that therefore mean it exists? Because I see it, does that mean it exists? Well, I will suggest to you that that does not mean that it exists. Because what if you went to sleep and you had a dream of a tree that was brown, and in your dream you touched the bark and you said it was rough and you said it was brown and had green leaves, and you noticed it had flowers and fruit, and when you woke up, I said, okay, prove that that tree exists. You could not prove it. The only thing you could do is tell me what you saw as a concept, what you felt as a concept. But you could not prove that the tree existed. And therefore, if you go outside and you see a tree and you touch it and you do all of that, you still cannot prove that it exists. It could be that your sensory perceptions that you're using to touch and feel and taste and understand the tree, it could be that everything you saw was only in your mind. There isn't any way to prove that anything in the universe actually exists as a material thing. And scientists have actually proven through philosophy that everything that physically exists is actually not a physical existence. It is really simply a concept. Think very, very deep here for a moment. Let's get right to the bottom of this now. Okay? The physical reality is actually principle. You see, now we look at the wall and we say, well, that's literal, it's physical, that's material, it really exists. What is the universe? There are these principles that create the physical. Sir Isaac Newton was the first person to come up with modern physics. All right, he invented calculus and other things, but He came up with modern physics, and he said there are certain laws, and that's what makes the universe. The universe isn't something physical. What is materiality? It's something hard. No, it's not hard. That's a concept. So he said, whatever is going in a certain direction, and at a certain speed, and in a certain velocity, it will continue in the same speed and velocity until acted upon by another object. See, here's what we want to understand. Why does the universe exist? Why does that wall, that tree, why do you exist? You exist because there's the law that says, so just don't think of anything physical and try to imagine what mind is. What is a person? What is a being? What is mind? What is an entity? What is God? And for that matter, what are you? Because you're also a mind, an entity, a being. Well, you're not physical. You dwell in the physical. We're talking about invisible principles, mere laws. Let me give you a better principle that you can see exists by virtue of itself, and not because anyone created the principle, because the principle itself exists by virtue of itself. Let me give you an example. If something is, it cannot be not. See, that's the principle. If it exists, it cannot not exist. See? Here's another principle. If something is moving, it's not standing still. If something is black, there must be a white. If something is up, there has to be a down. See, these are just principles. They're just concepts. No matter whether there's a computer somewhere or an individual thinking somewhere, the principle exists by virtue of itself. If something's in motion, it's not standing still. If something is white, it's not black. See, opposites must be opposites. They cannot be anything other than opposite. That is a law. That is a principle. So therefore, these laws create the variables, and that is what we understand or conceive, and that is the physical world. So the physical universe is nothing more than principles. And not only is the physical universe just principles, existence is just principle. It is by virtue of itself. Existence will always exist and cannot not exist, because the fact that you're here proves that existence exists. And existence, if it exists, cannot not exist. So you are eternal and forever by virtue of your own divine being. You must exist, and you will always exist, and you can do anything you want and conceive of anything you want. It's just an invisible thing called law. Mind is logic. The Logos. In the beginning was the Logos. The Logos was with God. And God was the Logos. The Logos is logic. It is reason. It is what we're talking about. These principles. So God is being, and being is the product of principle. The universe exists by virtue of itself, and these principles are also concepts, and that is mind. And that is what the universe is. Now this is why Stephen Hawking and some of these other supposed great minds have said that we are living in multiple dimensions and different universes all at the same time, simultaneously. Because they say that if you are going down the road and you see a fork in the road, and one is left and one is right, and you choose to go left, you've just created another universe where you went right. You didn't go right, you went left. So on that road, left, you saw trees and butterflies and bees, and that was a world that you saw and it existed. But the very fact that you turned left proves that there was a right, that you chose left, but there was a right, and so therefore there's another whole world that you didn't go and look at. So they're saying, Stephen Hawking is saying that that world does exist, even though you didn't experience it in this time and place, but that it somehow is created at that very moment, and it exists, and so you're living in a multi-dimensional universe. And I say that's ridiculous. Because the truth is everything is only a concept, both the left and the right. And I'm living a concept right now that I choose. I do not have to choose it, but I do. I didn't choose to go right. I created a concept. I did not create a world. It is not an actual existence. It doesn't exist. So, there are not simultaneously multi-universes that we live in different dimensions all around the universe. No, that is not true. There may be potential universes, potential dimensions, other potential universes, but there is only one universe that I live in. Now, there may be another universe that you live in. Our universes may coincide at times, or all the time, I don't know. But my universe is what I choose. It is what I conceive. It is what I believe in. It is what I see for myself. Anything I do not see, it does not exist in my universe. Now, in my universe, I see the left and I see the right. And I have definitely created both the left and the right. I didn't go on the other path. I reserved that in my mind for a different time, so that someday in the future I can go back and I can take the other road. And I have assurances that it exists, and I will see what is there. But as of right now, it only exists as a concept. So, some have said then the universe is not infinite, but that the actual universe is only a mind. And it doesn't exist in time or in space, but that is a concept. Time and space are concepts. And so all that really exists is an individual. And this particular individual we'll call God. God then thinks things. He imagines things, and whatever he imagines, it exists. That's his creation. Well, if he's not imagining it, it doesn't exist. So if he's not imagining infinity, then it doesn't exist. See, infinity can exist. The potential is there. He can go in any direction he wants. He can do anything he wants. But if he's not doing it, it doesn't exist at that moment. It exists as a potential someday in the future, at another time, or when he chooses to think those thoughts. The concept exists. However, that's only a concept. And concepts don't exist in reality. So, what we're going to call reality, the physical reality, physical is reality. It's what actually exists. And so the potential doesn't actually exist. And so the infinite doesn't actually exist. It's only a potential. It does exist potentially, and therefore you could say it exists. But it doesn't exist in reality as a physical thing. So the left side, or the left road that I took, became a physical reality for me. The right road did not, at that moment, become something physical. If I ever go back and take the right road, then the left road will no longer be a physical reality. It will be a memory. That's what the universe is. The universe is thought, but thought is not physical. So, if thoughts are not physical, then what I'm imagining and I'm conscious of, how is that actually physical? I can imagine that I'm touching something there. And that imagining is what we call the physical universe. That's why our Bible says that the physical things are temporary, because they are only going to last as long as I conceive of them. If I forget them, I push them into the recesses of my mind and I forget about them. And as long as I am forgetting about them, they don't exist. They're only potentials. I can always go back, but there has to be an actual continuum. Files in a computer cannot be brought up without pushing the appropriate key or command. And so, therefore, there is a way that miracles happen. See, when a tree grows in the forest, that's a miracle. And all things are possible with God, and all things are possible with you. Whatever you ask, you shall receive. The universe, then, both spirit and body, is one. This is an illustration we have in the Bible, with the man and the woman getting married. You see, the man represents the spirit, and the woman, or the bride of Christ, the bride is the body. And this is an illustration, and they become one flesh, and then they have children, and they procreate. So you see, the universe has the negative and the positive. They come together and they procreate. They proliferate. And so, the universe itself is both male and female. The physical is the part of consciousness that we see as reality. Spirit is the observer. See, there is the observer and that which is observed. But if you stop being an observer, and if you forget that you're the observer, and in your lust all you can think about is owning and possessing and being in that, then you lose that part of you that is the observer. So you must be an observer and the observed. You must learn to be both. A lot of people go through life, most people go through life not even knowing they are the observer. When they feel the pain or the heartache, that's all they can feel. They don't know that they can just be the observer and notice that there's pain. As soon as you learn that you can do that, you also can change that pain into joy, and you can observe the joy. And that peace comes into you because the pain goes away. So the universe then, what is it? God is spirit. That is that which is within you. And the outer, or the matter, or the mother, is that part of the existence that the observer observes of his reality. So what is a person? A person and a being are two different things. God is being. He is divine being. We are also divine being. And we're conceiving, and we're the thinker. When we understand that we're the thinker, then we move out of the physical, and we become both a male and a female, so that we can be both the observer and the observed. We can be both negative and positive. We can receive and we can give. As a person, we are enwrapped in the body and the pain and the suffering and the trouble and the lust. The desire is basically like gravity. It's pulling. It's like the negative that's pulling and making mass. It's ever pulling and pulling and pulling and pulling and making mass, the physical, the earth. So right now as a human, we're trapped in this world with lust. And we're ever pulling and pulling and becoming carnal, and we can't get out. We can't leave because the gravity is too strong. We've got to learn to be more spiritual in order to do that. That means that we've got to be more like God. Now, God is spiritual. God is also physical. There's a father principle and a mother principle. There's the divine father and the divine mother. And so, as a human being, we cannot conceive of anything other than what we are now, because we're trapped in this gravity, in this mass. We're trapped in the physical, and we do not know that we are not just the physical, we're not just the personality, and we're not just the ego. See, the gravity does more than just make mass, it also makes time, it warps time, and it creates time. See, when we live outside of time, we become the observer. It's like everything pauses and we look at everything, see it going on around us, and the pain goes away. Because the pain is part of the illusion, part of the time and the space, which is an illusion. So, when I say that God is not a man, I am also saying that you, a person, you're more than just this concept. You're conceiving of the trees and the house and the stream and the water and the sunshine. All of this is a concept. But you are greater than that. You are a child of God. You are a divine being. You are more than just the physical. And you are more than just your personality. And you are more than just this one person. You are actually one with Christ. And Christ is one with God. And so you're more than just the personality. The personality is temporary. And so you're really not just this personality. You're the whole. You are spirit and you are flesh. When you learn to be both, then you are whole. See, there was a time when you were just spirit, but you wanted to leave that and be a human. You wanted to come here and have children and have a wife and build a house and experience all these things. But then you got trapped. What you've got to do is learn that you're both. Being a person is wonderful. You can be anything you want. You can have lust. You can have thoughts and ideas and adventures. But you can be more than that. You can leave this body and become one with spirit. Because you are the infinite divine. So that is the big problem that Christianity has made. Because we have said that God is over there and I am over here. That I am a sinner damned to hell. But when Jesus came to the earth, he said, "You need no man to teach you, but I will send the Holy Spirit." The Father is within you. The kingdom of God is within you. And the works that I do, you shall do greater. Come and follow me. You know the way. Thomas says, "We don't know the way." What are you talking about? Jesus said, "Yes, you do know the way. You've only forgotten, Thomas. You were with the Father." You see, no man has ascended unto the Father except he who has come down from the Father, even the Son of Man who was with the Father in the beginning. He was not talking about he himself, but he was talking about that Son of Man, which we all are, that spiritual Son of God. And he said no man can ever ascend to God without first descending from God. Jesus was saying, "Ye are gods, and the scripture cannot be broken. Ye are heirs of God, joint heirs with Christ. And whatsoever you say, if you say unto that mountain, be uprooted and thrown into the sea, will obey you." Because Jesus was trying to tell you, you have to have faith. That whatever you believe, it will happen according to your faith. Because Jesus was teaching us about a universe which is much bigger than Christianity has been told. We are not just the ego, and we do not have to suffer. And we will suffer, and will continue to suffer, until we open our eyes and become the observer. Until we become spiritual. And though we weep, we do not weep. See, if you're mourning and you're suffering, you must act as though you're not suffering. You must observe what's going on and just see what's going on. If you are going to own land, be as though you do not possess it. He said, yeah, go ahead and own land, but do it as though you do not own it or possess it, or that it doesn't possess you. See, go ahead and enjoy a wife, but don't let that become all there is, because it will become a suffering. It will become painful. So in this world, we're growing, and all of the pain that we're feeling is just becoming lighter. It's just that process of becoming divine. It's the process of ascending unto the Father. As we ascend, the weightier parts of this physical mass drops off. That's the pain that you feel. And you can stay here and feel the pain as long as you want. See, but don't get tricked into thinking that you have to do that. You do that because you want to. You suffer. When that woman left you, you suffered because you wanted to. This is your experience right now. You're learning the things you want to learn. You're here learning things and exploring this world and having your adventure. You can't understand the sweet if you don't taste the bitter. You can't know the good if you've never had the bad. And so we partook of the fruit of the knowledge of good and bad because we wanted to become like God. And friends, because we were God and we wanted to become like men. And so, friends, that is the conclusion of the third in this series. And I think we'll do one more. And that will come hopefully tomorrow. I hope you guys all have a wonderful day. And I hope this made some sense. This is David Bose. We'll see you again tomorrow. Have a good day.